A man sentenced to 90 years in prison for the KK Corner killings has been granted parole.
We start in Lake Charles, where the community is recovering from a tragic and shocking crime.
3 young people murdered, their bodies left in the store cooler. Teresa Schmidt, KPLC 7 News.
KK's Corner, now under new ownership with a new name, was the convenience store where 3 people were killed in an apparent armed robbery.
Marty LaBeouf, Stacy Reeves, and Nicole Guidry all leave behind family, friends, and a community that will sadly miss them.
It all happened at the intersection of Highway 14 and Tom Hebert Road, July 6, 1997.
The revised sketch of a man thought to be one of the last in the store before closing. But why did it take so long?
These rumors, people still believe them. Let them say them. They ought to say them to you, and if they do, I'm sure lawsuits will follow.
Wayne McKelvin doesn't know pain, and he never will.
I'm not answering any other questions.
I was one of the reporters who was assigned to find out what happened that day, and still reporting new details 26 years later.
This year marks 26 years since 3 people were killed at a convenience store in Lake Charles. The only person who faced charges in connection with the crime was granted parole and had it revoked within 24 hours this year.
With this case back in the news, we decided to take you back to 1997 and bring you up to speed on the decades of developments and the search that continues for those responsible.
KK's Corner, now under new ownership with a new name, was the convenience store where 3 people were killed in an apparent armed robbery. It all happened here at the intersection of Highway 14 and Tom Hebert Road, July 6, 1997.
It was just before 5 Sunday morning when a store employee reported a burglary at KK's convenience store. Soon after sheriff's deputies arrived, the grisly discovery was made. 3 young people murdered, their bodies left in the store cooler. The victims are store employees Marty LaBeouf and Stacy Reeves, seen here in her high school yearbook 8 years ago, and Reeves' babysitter, 14-year-old Nicole Guidry.
I can't imagine somebody looking at my daughter and killing her. I just can't. I wonder if she was alive when he left her there. I wonder if she was asking for me. I wonder a lot of things because I promised her I would protect her, and now she's dead.
6 months and no arrests. America's Most Wanted took on the case.
We start in Lake Charles, where the community is recovering from a tragic and shocking crime.
It's the national attention investigators pray for to solve cases. America's Most Wanted headlined its weekly program with a look at the KK's Corner triple homicide. Local investigator Larry Killen with the Violent Crimes Task Force was in Washington, D.C. last night at the headquarters of America's Most Wanted.
During the show's 3 airings, which is 3 time zones, we received 52 calls in regards to our case. From there, we'll be checking out all these calls.
Kellen says half of those calls were from this area and the others were from viewers spread across the U.S. After months of investigating and no arrests, he says new tips give them a good point to continue their search. Some new facts were made public during the broadcast, a new, more detailed composite of one of the last known men seen in KK's during closing time, a description of a man seen with him, along with a description of a keychain he carried in his back pocket. The broadcast also brought public investigators' theory of what happened the night Marty LaBeouf, Stacy Reeves, and Nicole Guidry were shot to death. It's believed Stacy Reeves was forced to open the store safe before she was killed.
I feel that we've got a lot more attention, that it's back up in the media again, and that we're going to start getting a lot more leads, and some of these leads that we already have may pan out to be something very pertinent to the case.
Operators for America's Most Wanted will be standing by to take calls on the case. Kellen says he expects more calls to come in that will be passed on to the Violent Crimes Task Force for further investigation. Jackie Leday, KPLC 7 News.
Every fact, every detail, every rumor about what happened July 6, 1997 in KK's Corner has fascinated the public, and no one has been keeping up with the case more than Lane LaBeouf, brother of victim Marty LaBeouf. Like many, he watched America's Most Wanted Saturday night.
I was just overwhelmed with information.
Because LaBeouf says many of the facts that came out in the story he was hearing for the first time, along with the rest of the country, like the witness reenacted here that saw two men arguing inside shortly before the store closed, and the red truck that was seen in the parking lot. LaBeouf thinks he, along with the local public, had a right to know sooner.
Anyone who might have been passing the area, if they would have known this information, well, yeah, I've seen that, yeah, I remember that. Holding it back, you know, protect the case. I can see the grounds on that, but I can't understand the amount of information that we received on the show. I can't understand how that wasn't made public.
LaBeouf is pleased with the revised sketch of a man thought to be one of the last in the store before closing. But why did it take so long, 7 months, to surface? Don Dixon with the FBI says the composite was only completed about a month ago. The earliest, a nationally renowned hypnotist was able to draw details from the witness. Investigators say they waited to release it with America's Most Wanted for greater impact.
We wanted to release this thing nationally as addition locally at the same time. A lot of the local calls we've got are kind of repeats of the calls we got initially when the case first broke. Some of our new national calls are new type leads that we're going to pursue.
Dixon says other details were withheld to preserve the integrity of the case, and that key witness, the one whose memory generated the sketch, has remained out of the spotlight because she fears for her safety. Mike Rush, KPLC 7 News.
After the sketch was released, rumors started circulating that the person in the image looked like the sheriff's son. We stress that the Violent Crimes Task Force and every law enforcement agency did look into and question the sheriff's son at the time, and they say there was no evidence linking him to it. However, the sheriff would hold a press conference to try and clear his son's name. Lawsuits followed. Eventually, the sheriff was voted out of office. We pick things up in February 1998, 7 months after the murders.
I'm asking now for any law-abiding citizen that hears these people making false accusations and rumors to please call the Sheriff's Department and give us names, dates, and places.
Whoever started these rumors, they're not going to make me or my family just go away and fold and go away. We're not going to do that. Y'all have underestimated the strength of the McKelvin family and friends.
More than a year after the murders and 8 months after airing on America's Most Wanted, a person who called in after watching the episode gave investigators the break they needed.
As a result of this investigation, Thomas Frank Cisco Jr., 29 years of age, from the New Orleans, Louisiana area, has been arrested and charged with three counts of first-degree murder.
The tip that led to the arrest was a witness account that one of the men had a rabbit's foot keychain, which someone recognized. She identified Thomas Frank Cisco. After his arrest, it was said there were at least 35 different statements given by Cisco, many of which contradicted each other. As you watch the videotaped confessions, remember, although Cisco named several people, none have ever been charged. Police saying there's no evidence linking them to the crime, and some have a solid alibi.
There are over 35 different confessions and statements made that will be played throughout the trial. The problem is some of them are very accurate and some of them we know contain things that are false. So it's going to be difficult for the jury to look at all those statements and try to determine what the truth is. But we feel very strongly that a lot of the information in that statement only the killer would know.
Well, I know who did it. Okay. I was there. Okay. He just popped up like out of the blue, man, and said, let's go rob KK's corner. Stacey, I want you to know that I'm really sorry for what happened. If I knew you were going to be there that night, I would have never let it happen. I really wouldn't.
The first suspect Cisco named as the shooter was cleared quickly. His alibi was solid and didn't match the witness's description. Deputies say when they asked Cisco about it, he laughed and said he just told them that name because he didn't like him. He would give a drastically different statement just 4 days later.
But why would you confess to murders, Tom, to keep from being arrested? That doesn't make sense.
I'm just telling you, Lucky. I swear on, if you give me a stack of Bibles right now, but I swear on my kid's life, and I don't never swear on my kid's life or anything. I did not commit these murders, dude. I did not commit these murders, and I do not know who did commit these murders.
The next video confession release would come in January of 1999. The story very different from the first ones. Not only the reason he came to Lake Charles that night, how he got there, who shot the victims, who cut the phone lines, and how much was stolen. Cisco was now claiming to be the one who pulled the trigger.
I pulled a 9mm and I told them all that this was the hold up. I called them each, one by one, from where they were standing in the aisle. And I motioned them back to the cooler one by one. And as they came back there, I set them down, executional style, and shot them.
Tom, I mean, you've told me, the first story you ever told us about this was that you didn't do it, and then you told me, that you did it yourself.
I understand that. Yes, I did.
And now you're telling me this story.
This is the true story. I have nothing to you about.
Thomas Cisco went to trial in October 2000 in Calcasieu Parish. I was there every day as new details came out.
I feel very strongly that Tom Cisco is one of the several people who were involved in the murders, and we intend to prove through his own testimony as well as testimony of other witnesses that he was there that night and he actively participated in the murders of Stacy and Marty and Nicole.
But with no physical evidence or little physical evidence.
It makes it very difficult. It's a very difficult case, a very tough case. There are a lot of things we have to overcome, but we feel very confident that when the jury hears everything, they'll be convinced that he was there.
Your eyelids begin to get heavier.
A witness at the store that night was identified as Virginia Johnson. She later underwent hypnosis to try to remember more about what she saw that night as she passed by the suspects. Johnson noticed one wore a rabbit's foot keychain. She also provided information for sketches released to the public.
I noticed they have a rabbit's tail on the keychain.
Numerous statements were given by Cisco, many contradictory. I filed this next story in October of 2000 as the murder trial continued.
You and who?
Me, Chris, Bobby, and Malcolm.
January 29th, 99, Thomas Frank Cisco gives video statement number 5 about the murders at KK's Corner. Not only are there inconsistencies in Cisco's statements, some things he says are just plain wrong, and his defense attorney is bringing those items to the jury's attention. For instance, he talks about tying the victim's hands.
Remember that we tied her hands up outside the store.
Okay.
I mean, outside the cooler.
Wrong. Investigators say the victim's hands were not tied, and his numerous statements are riddled with bits and pieces of wrong information. He speaks of when he shot Marty LaBeouf.
Which way is he facing?
He's facing me.
Facing you?
He's facing me.
Okay.
Wrong. Investigators say LaBeouf was shot in the back of the head. In earlier statements, Cisco talks about a back door at KK's. Wrong. There is no back door. Still, District Attorney Rick Bryant says the case is going exactly the way they thought it would.
You have the defense arguing that everything he says is a lie. You have the state arguing that while some of the things are false, a lot of what he says, only the man who committed the murders would know. And then we leave it up to the jury to decide what they believe.
2 more confessions were heard in the form of audio tapes from the jail during the trial. In one, Cisco claims that the former sheriff's son, Richard McKelvin, hired him to kill Stacy Reeves for $20,000. The district attorney again restated McKelvin is not a suspect.
The information we have is that he had an alibi for the night of these events, and he was not identified by our witness. So if someone brings us more proof on anyone involved, we'll look at it, but no one's brought us anything. It's one of many names that have been brought up. Again, it's Mr. Cisco naming someone in a confession that he was with. All those people have been under investigation. I know that Mr. McKelvin Richard McKelvin was put in the photo lineup for Virginia Johnson. She positively said he was not the person that was there, and there's been no other proof linking him to this crime that we're aware of.
It took the jury 2 hours to convict Cisco on 3 counts, first-degree murder. He would be sentenced to die by lethal injection.
Really and truly, if they could crucify him, it would be the best, because that might be the most painful and agonizing death he could ever stand. But he's not human. I don't think he needs to be in our society.
We knew in our heart that he was involved in it, but there most definitely is others. But I feel with our sheriff that we have now, we will get to the bottom of it and get all of them that is involved.
The state Supreme Court overturned the verdict in 2003, citing a conflict of interest with his defense attorney that was too serious to waive. The case was turned over to the state attorney general's office, and in 2010, Cisco was allowed to plead guilty to lesser charges, avoiding another trial.
I think what everybody needs to understand is that as a result of the plea today, that Thomas Cisco will die in Angola. Ms. LaBeouf, in her testimony, it was most telling about how she has been in a prison without bars for these past 14 years. And so part of the reason that this was done was to allow these families and this parish, you know, some sense of closure.
I have no hatred towards him. In fact, I feel sorry for him. I have to forgive him in order for God to forgive me. And I do. I forgive him.
Despite what was promised, Cisco was allowed to go before the parole board in 2023 and was granted parole, but he never left the prison before the decision was quickly reversed.
Covering the news for Southwest Louisiana, this is 7 News Nightcast.
A man sentenced to 90 years in prison for the KK Corner killings has been granted parole. Good evening, I'm Cynthia Arsenault. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thomas Cisco was originally found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to die for the deaths of 3 people, but his conviction was thrown out. Then in 2010, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of manslaughter and was sentenced to 90 years in prison. The brutal murders happened in 1997 at the KK Corner convenience store in Lake Charles. Stacy Reeves, Marty LaBeouf, and Nicole Guidry were found shot to death in the store's cooler. Cisco was 41 years old when he was sentenced for manslaughter in 2010. At the time, prosecutors said he would not be eligible for parole until he was 104 years old. But instead, he was granted parole today after serving about 24 years in total from the time of his arrest. New tonight, we have an inside look at that parole hearing with video and sound from the hearing. Here's KPLC's Barry Lowen.
Thomas Frank Cisco is 54 years old and would have been released in 2088 had he served his full 90-year sentence.
For the record, how long you served on this sentence?
I've served 24 years and 6 months. I held the gun on him and stood there and watched while the shooter did what he did.
The victims' families were in support of Cisco's early release.
This is unique, at least for me, in the sense that the victims' family members, they're not opposed. I mean, they're actually rooting for you because they don't see you as the shooter.
Nicole Guidry was only 14 when she was murdered. Her sister Connie Trahan spoke on Cisco's behalf today.
Cisco has served time for his role in this crime. I don't feel that he's an ongoing threat to my family.
Thomas Cisco says he is remorseful for the part he played in the crime and that he is a changed man.
I'm sorry for what happened and will regret the choices I regret the choices I made for the rest of my life. I will live with the nightmares I have for the rest of my life as well. I'm not the same person that came to jail 24 years ago. That man used drugs, lived the street life. The man I am today, I'm clean, drug-free, have God in my life and in my heart, and have remorse. I ask not for them to forget, but to forgive my inability to be a man and give everyone closure.
Jane Hogan, Cisco's attorney, requested his release because of the victim's family support and because he was a first-time offender.
He expressed support of the victim's family. We would ask for grant Mr. Cisco to Tennessee, also bearing in mind that he is technically a first offender with a low risk of recidivism and a huge support system. Thank you.
The parole board members Alvin Roche Jr., Pearl Wise, and Tony Marabella unanimously voted to release Cisco.
Good luck and have a good life.
In Lake Charles, Barry Lowen, 7 News.
At last word, Thomas Cisco was still held at Angola. The Calcasieu District Attorney's Office says he could be released within a week. We caught up with the brother of Marty LaBeouf this evening, one of the people killed back in 1997. He says, although he doesn't speak for his whole family, he believes the parole board made the right call.
I believe that Thomas was under a lot of duress and intimidation, and I believe he was being worked like a puppet on a string to change his story and everything to where all of his testimonies became invalid. But I do not believe the man to be guilty of the murders. I believe him to be a witness to the murders.
Those who fought for Cisco to pay for his crimes are outraged with the parole board's decision. Our team coverage continues tonight. Jade Morrow joins us live with their reaction.
It's a decision many do not agree with. Former Calcasieu District Attorney Rick Bryant says he would have personally objected to Cisco's release had he known about the hearing.
But he's the one who told us exactly where the victims were sitting in that freezer and exactly where they were shot and exactly where they were found. So we knew he was in there and we knew he committed that crime, and the jury agreed with us.
The parole board's decision to grant parole to Thomas Cisco was met with outrage. Rick Bryant was the Calcasieu District Attorney at the time. He secured a first-degree murder charge for Cisco, who was sentenced to die, before being downgraded to manslaughter charges.
And yet the Attorney General's office that had the case refused to go forward prosecuting for the death penalty, and now this Attorney General's office doesn't even show up at the hearing. That leaves the victims and law enforcement and everybody who busted their ass working on this case with this horrible outcome. It is outrageous, and I am disgusted.
Current Calcasieu Parish District Attorney Stephen Dwight says they were equally as shocked.
We were shocked that there was a vote of 3-0 to release this man who had really violently killed 3 of our citizens here in Calcasieu such a long time ago.
Dwight says the Attorney General's office didn't stay true to its word.
He pled to these 3 murders, and the citizens were assured he would spend the rest of his life in jail, and that didn't happen. And it's unfortunate that didn't happen. I disagree with what the parole board did.
And the Calcasieu DA's office confirms the State Attorney General's office did not attend today's parole hearing. Live in studio, Jade Morrow, 7 News.
Good luck and have a good life.
Thank you.
That was 2 days ago when convicted killer Thomas Cisco was granted parole. Today, his luck changed. The man convicted of manslaughter in connection with the triple homicide at KK's Corner has now had his parole rescinded. Good evening, I'm Cynthia Arsenault. This afternoon, the District Attorney's Office in Calcasieu Parish released the updated information about Thomas Cisco's case. More tonight from KPLC's Barry Lowen.
The parole board granted Cisco's parole February 8th. On February 9th, Cisco pled guilty to an unreported contraband infraction that allegedly happened February 7th. The infraction occurred before the parole hearing, rendering Cisco ineligible for parole.
And he was asked during the parole hearing if he's had any infractions, and he told the parole board no, and that wasn't the truth. He was aware that there was an infraction the day before. The day before the parole hearing, he was not very truthful with the parole board. They actually had a disciplinary board hearing the following day, and where he pled guilty to that disciplinary infraction.
Dwight says his office is always present for every parole hearing.
We are there to oppose a parole hearing, or we give our input to the parole board to let them know if we approve it or not approve it. And we are there in person when we do that. We will do that. If we get the file back, we will do that in the future. But the process worked here because they did realize what happened and corrected the wrong.
One thing that's undisputed is there's at least one other person who was involved in this crime who has never been charged. Investigators say the case is still open, and the families urge anyone with more information to come forward.